On the agenda tonight, we're going to be having a look at and having a listen to Annie Lennox and Sting. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we're going to be taking a look at a few different performances tonight. First of all, Annie Lennox performing her version of No More I Love Yous, and that was by The Lover Speaks, but that's going to be performed on the Letterman show, a live performance there. We'll then have a look at her live performance of Fragile, performed in front of Sting, and then we'll take a look at Sting performing Fragile live as well. So let's jump into her performance from the Letterman show. As you'll see on screen, we're all ready to go, and if you haven't seen one of these before, the yellow lines here, the reason it's looking a bit busy is because with this particular song there's backing vocals going on the whole time, but we do get enough of her voice in isolation to take a look at the voice line, or the vocal line. I think I'm going to start calling it a vocal line on the screen, and we'll call this the pitch graph because a couple of people can't get waveforms out of their head when referring to these lines on the screen, because audio waveforms are something totally different that deal with frequency. So we'll start calling these vocal lines on the pitch graph, because the pitch, you might be able to see down the side here, you got your C5 here, and when we get everything on screen, you should have the piano underneath so that you can relate her notes to the female ranges if you want to. But let's jump into it and see how Annie gets on.
From the gracious days, I used to restless nights, my heart would bleed for you to see. Oh, but now whistling my roaches to make me cry. No more I love yous. Language is leaving me. No more I love yous. Changes are shifting outside the word.
And I'm just going to jump in here because when we're taking a look at Annie's voice, she has probably one of the straightest voices that we've listened to. And what I mean when I say that is in relation to vibrato, and the fact that she doesn't really use vibrato at all, or at least not in a sense where you really notice it. And it's generally something that we take for granted about voices, that you're going to hear a little bit of vibrato. But when we get this isolated vocal, and with these vocal lines up on screen, when we take it back, you can see how in previous videos, when we've had singers who are applying vibrato, sometimes they've been as far as a semitone above and below the note, and sometimes we've had 3 semitones, so a really wide vibrato. So if we were trying to relate that to this particular vocal that we've got here from Annie, it means that we'd see this vocal phrase not just stay here, but touch all of these lines above and below. But the reason that Annie's voice is so unique, and you just know it straight away when you hear it, is because she doesn't really apply any vibrato. And when she does apply vibrato, it's really subtle and it's not really even. You're not getting even waves all the time. And an even vibrato, for example, when you go na, you get even waves to it generally, but you have some singers like Freddie Mercury. When we did an analysis on his voice, the vibrato is almost uneven and so unique, and trying to copy it is a near impossibility because of how seemingly random it is. But that's all part of the personality of the vocalist, and it really does highlight how important vibrato is in distinguishing one voice from the next, because it is part of the expression. Let's also take notice of the pitch accuracy that we have here on this F4. We are bang on 440 Hertz tuning here, and this is something that you'll find with Annie Lennox just in general. She's really accurate, and with her vocal style, she has to be, because the straighter you sing a note, the more obvious it is when you don't hit that note dead on. And it's something that I mentioned in a recent video where we had a wider vibrato. I said that the ear and the brain takes the average of what it can hear. And when you're covering, 1, 2, and 3 notes, it's going to take an average of that, so it will sound in tune, even though you're hitting other notes, technically, when we look at this pitch graph. But here, just being straight on these lines, if Annie isn't directly over these lines, it would really stick out, because there's no hiding from it when you're hitting straight notes. So technically, you can say that this is one of the hardest ways to sing, because there's no safety net. You can't hide it because there's no vibrato. If you're slightly sharp or flat, if you're aiming for a note and you go, nah, and we're trying to hit that note, ah, and I go slightly flat and go, ah, and I add vibrato, the vibrato now includes the note that I'm not quite reaching. So you get that mean average. The ear will make it sound, especially when you've got the backing in there as well, will make it sound more in tune. So this is why vibrato is a great technique to try and master if you're learning to sing, because it means that you don't now have to hit the notes dead between the eyes if you apply vibrato all the time. I'm just going to play a quick vocal phrase here where you can hear the use of air in Annie's voice, but also the way that she's got this soft onset when she wants it, bringing her vocal cords together really softly rather than getting an aggressive attack. So let me just play this.
Changes are shifting outside the world.
And you can hear the way that she's going, changes are shifting outside the world. There's that soft onset, is what it's called, where you're bringing those vocal cords together softly with air. So we're going, you're just gradually bringing them together. And when you do it really softly, like my last example there, you'll hear a little bit of almost vocal fry that wants to happen, but then you bring it together to get the note a little bit more clearly. But that's great as well for finding pitch. When you go, just keep your vocal cords in the same place, allow air, and then bring them back together, air, bring them back together. So a great example there of the dynamic use of the voice in general, volume-wise, obviously, but use of air as well to achieve that dynamic change. Just taking it forward a little bit, and by the way, this isn't the actual audio from the performance. I've isolated the vocal. That's why you can't hear any other instruments going on, because we just want to focus on the voice here. I'm going to just let it play for a little bit longer. You'll notice how when you're looking at these vocal lines we've got on screen, she ascends quite a lot to her destination. Even when she increases in pitch quite dramatically, she'll ascend to the note first to just feel her way there. But that's all part of her artistry, her stylizations that are personal to her. She'll just slide into notes. But let's listen again.
Desire, despair, desire.
So just as a quick example there, when we're getting to these notes, she's ascending to the note, and when she then hit a dramatic change in pitch, again, sliding up to the note before she gets there and then holds it. And listen to that breath, the no. It's just finding those notes. And this is why she is so accurate, because she's getting the pitch with breath and a little bit of vocal cord closure to begin with, and then she's leaning into it, bringing those vocal cords together and getting an even brighter sound and just nailing the notes every time. And it's great to see them here, this F4 just dead on, holding it, and you can see how the vibrato is just in there a little bit, but it's so subtle that it's almost like this. It's almost how you would expect a held note to look. If someone was just trying to keep the same pitch the whole time, you would still see these tiny variations. So we are going to have a quick look at her performance of Fragile in front of Sting. And you can tell that she is a huge fan of Sting's, and she's obviously nervous as well because, I mean, who wouldn't be performing a song like this in front of the guy who wrote it that you're a massive fan of anyway? So we're going to jump into it. And this is a totally unique version of it, and she's going to perform it nowhere near the way that Sting performs it normally, and we're going to have a look at that afterwards. But just to get a comparison between the two and why they do sound so different.
If blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun.
I'm just going to jump in here because there was a cut to Sting's face there, and there is a video online somewhere, and the way that they've edited it is to make it look like Sting isn't enjoying the performance and kind of shows it in that light, whereas at the end of this performance she gets a standing ovation from Sting and he applauds. So they didn't keep that in that video that I'm sure they just made it to make it go viral and get lots of views. But straight away, when we're looking at this, she's obviously nervous, and you can see a lot more going on in the voice here. There isn't an even vibrato, but it's more of an uneven shake, and that is what happens to your voice, especially when you're holding straight notes and there's a little bit of nerves in there. It was a really stripped back performance as well. I know that the piano has been taken out, obviously, because of the isolated vocal, but when we're having a look at her pitch, we are still really accurate with the pitch here. And there's obviously going to be a little wobble up and down, but if we had a full band playing here, the tempo of this is a lot slower as well. And stylistically, something that Annie does is hold these notes, and this is why it's a totally different version of it, because she's holding the expressions where they aren't normally held. So this is why it's going to sound totally different to the original. I personally am so used to hearing the original that hearing this version, you really have to do a little bit of a shift, and I think that's what Sting's doing here. He's just understanding this version and getting his head round it because it is so different. But let's jump back into it.
Perhaps this final act was meant to cleanse your lifetime's argument.
And look at the accuracy there on the G4. She's bang on, but her vocal onset here is a lot harsher, and she's bringing together those vocal cords straight away. She's not, in the other performance we had that, that's how she was approaching the notes, whereas here she's going, it's straight in, and she's kind of got that harshness to her voice. She's really leaning into the sound here and is nailing these notes straight on the G4, which you have to be. If you're going straight in with that kind of onset going, that has got to be there, because if you go, and you miss it, it's really going to stand out. But this is the thing with Annie's voice. She's got that ability to just breathe and then bring it in softly, or have a more aggressive sound to it, just smacking those vocal cords together. Let's jump into a bit more.
On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in there because that was more of an example of that softer kind of breathing into it.
On and on
and she had that ascension. I think she actually just did that on the beginning, yeah, the first note, and then didn't go up to it the second time, just but you get more of a breath in there.
The rain will say.
And straight. The rain will sing. So, in the original, I mean, the tempo's wildly different because on that original it's na na na, and we've got that little hop in there. On and on, the rain will sing. A totally different version of it, even straightening out this original groove, getting rid of that just for this version. Try and remember some of these vocal phrases that we've just had a listen to and how long they were. It was a slower tempo, so Annie was holding those notes for a long time, and you'll be able to remember those vocal lines that we saw on the screen, the way that they would go all the way across the screen. Now, let's have a listen to Sting, and you'll notice here how low this is in his register. It's in the same key as he recorded it, but it's a really relaxed vocal.
If blood will flow, when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun, tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away. Something in our mind will always stay.
So what you start to notice with Sting's voice is the way that he cuts off phrases all the time. He's never holding a note for a long duration, adding wide vibrato. He cuts off lots of vocal phrases here, and occasionally, as in a tiny bit of vibrato, it's not wide at all, but it's just a little wobble that he throws in there, and now and again, just to get the note to sing, and really accurate pitch-wise, as always. But you can see here just the gaps that we've got in the vocal. Obviously, the pitch monitoring software doesn't always pick up the vocal, but a lot of the gaps here are due to the fact that Sting just isn't singing. He's cutting off these vocal phrases early.
Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch our lifetime's argument.
And there we go, ending with that consonant, the T, argument. And that's it. There's no argument, none of that holding. Obviously, when I say that he's cutting these notes off early, it's not like the original had long notes in it. I'm just saying that that's something that he did on the original and is doing in this live performance that is something that Annie doesn't do. She really exaggerates the notes.
Nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could.
And there's that little wobble. Nothing ever could. That little vocal line we can see here, that wobble of vibrato, like I said, he just throws it in now and again to get that note to sing, and that was the B3 there. Just in case you want the reference point of the male ranges, they're up on screen now. And the B3, I mean, this is all in that conversational space. We haven't got any straining going on here from Sting. So the B3, we're going to be down here, and you can see top end of the bass range, really in our baritone range here. So yeah, nice and easy vocal. And you can hear that in Sting's voice. It really is one of those songs that has that conversational delivery and just telling the story of the song. So an interesting one to take a look at tonight because it brings into focus artistic interpretation, because that's exactly what Annie is using in order to get Fragile, take it on herself, do her own version of it, her own interpretation of it, and then that's what we get with that performance in front of Sting, which must have been really nerve-wracking. But thank you guys for requesting this video and these videos for me to take a look at. Keep those suggestions coming in the comments section below. As always, let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!